some learning communities. There's a lot of information today that I will be presenting, but we can have special workshops on each one of them. But I'm hoping that this the information will be helpful for you to structure your program or to use in your program, in your organization, and also in your in your families as well. So I thought the presentations before this morning that were wonderful, creative, and sort of it really leads well into this presentation. And Dr. Andrew Wong talked about the social aspect. So this is now leading into this. You will also find these connections coming into this peace power strategy. So I'm going to you'll hear me saying next for the slides, so keep that in mind. Okay, so next, please. Thank you. So we'll start. All right, so one of the questions I have for you is, how do you know you have learned something? And if you could put your answers in the chat line, your responses, I really, I'll get a feedback from that, the chat. How do you know you have learned something? Okay, I see when you can teach it to someone. Maybe changes your thoughts about something. If you can teach it, yes. When I feel happy after, okay, when we're able to, wow, okay, using it's successful when you incorporate it in your life. Wow, those are a lot of feedback. So it has to do, and next, please. Next slide. So what is learning? It's changes in behavior that result from experience, and it involves change. It involves activities. It involves interaction. Also, it occurs randomly throughout the process. It involves problem solving and also a process of acquiring knowledge. All our learners come to us. Well, anybody who is learning, everybody's learning at different paces. And we always come to a learning space or any space where we can learn. And we already have our preconceived ideas and our thoughts and our experiences. And these are the gifts that we bring to this space today. So as we begin our journey on peace power, and if you feel comfortable sharing after the presentation, please feel free to do so. So we are going to move forward. Next slide, please. So what I'm going to be talking about today is, what is the peace power strategy? What is the research that's behind this? And what are the four practices? And how we can use those practices to form positive learning communities. Okay. Next. So what is the peace power strategy? It is the peace power strategy. It's not a series of lesson plans that we add to our curriculum. It's a strategy based on behavioral research, mostly from the sciences of behavioral analysis, and it was developed by Dr. Mark Matani. Peace power is a strategy for building nonviolent communities. And in designing this strategy, Dr. Matani suggests to be aware of the commitment of resources. We do need a lot of resources to start implementing this strategy. And it involves a lot of people coming together to support this. So it's recognizing and also addressing cultural networks in society, supporting and encouraging coercion and violence. In other words, be able to recognize where there is coercion and violence. For example, in the Beat the Street program, we noticed, and we also we had students coming in from the justice system. So sometimes the results or the responses to the crimes or the violence was not very productive. So in this strategy, we're looking at can we get into a strategy where it's a positive, where the students can move forward. So there's a choosing between the two powers. Next slide. So we're choosing between two types of power. It's a coercive, competitive, adversary power. And that's not very productive in the environment. And it has many also personal and social side effects. And I think Dr. Andrew Wong talked about the anxiety brings to learning, and we observe that in the classroom. The constructive power, the new way of life, it is a positive move towards learning. So it is focusing, it brings healing and strengthens the personal and community networks. And also it comes together to provide guidance for moving from a coercive power to a constructive power. And this is shown in the research from Dr. Matani. And we will see as we go forward how this takes place. Next, please. So what is the peace power strategy? It involves a strategic change in cultural practices, and it's shaped by family support, peer support, organizational support, and community cultures that are unique settings and incorporates evidence-based tools and activities. This strategy is based in the indigenous culture, and it's a recognition between the behavior and the environment. So it's designed as a flexible strategy for cultural changes in practices. And it involves many people coming together to form this positive environment to move forward. Okay. And what are the four practices or cornerstones of peace power? Next slide. So the four core practices are: recognize contributions and successes, stopping the put downs and acting with respect, solving problems, in other words, sharing power to build the community, and making peace. So these are the four cornerstones in peace power that we used in building the program for Beatty Street. Next, please. So why is this important and how does it impact learning? Recognizing contributions and successes is the heart of the peace power culture, whether it be in family, a classroom, in a larger culture or organization. And according to the research, targeted recognition and reinforcement for positive social behavior can foster higher levels of intrinsic motivation. This we did find in our program. The motivation with our learners really increased as time went on. And we saw really positive changes in behavior. Many youth whom I encountered come to the program have experienced little success and recognition by others. So this recognition is essential in beginning a process of growth. And it's important that in an environment of recognition, definite rules with clear consequences and accountability is present, because no amount of setting of rules will work in the long run in a recognition poor environment. In other words, what it means is, although we can have recognition and rewarding, we also have to have a sense of guidelines and boundaries that are there and consequences if things are not going the way they should be going. And I think everybody in the program was aware of that. And we did talk about those boundaries as well in the program. And the recognition must be meaningful, and it's also should be tangible. It involved also staff and youth all came together, and it was overall, it's a process of growth that we saw. The next slide. So tools that we use to implement recognition. One was the recognition notes. I will be showing you a board of the recognition notes, how we used it. And then we also used peace power circles. And the peace power circles, we used it in, say, for town hall meetings and getting together, and also recognizing the contributions of everyone in those circles. And we had group projects, which I will be talking about, and also celebrations. Next slide. Okay, so here's the peace power board that we had. We had this in the classroom, but we also had a board in the hallway of our organization, a recognition board. Now, if you can see this board on the left-hand side, you'll see all the recognition notes. That's where students posted their recognition notes to each other, to the staff. Staff posted also recognition notes to other staff and to the learners. So it was all coming together of this community to form this strategy and to really move forward and help the students to grow. Everybody actually grew in this process. And also we have the shared power. We had a place for sharing power and for making peace. And the recognition notes, I think I have a slide that shows what it looks like closer. I think the next slide should show it. Here's the recognition note, recognizing contributions and successes. So we use this note in class after a class session. And I recognize it was the individuals who were recognized, and also for the actions. So it was for what they did and what they contributed to the class. This can be used in the home. It can be used in the classroom. It can used in activities, any activities, meetings. But sometimes, we would post these notes, but some people did not like to be recognized publicly. So what we did was, it was a private recognition. If a student had recognized another student and they weren't comfortable being recognized publicly, the note was given to the person. And then it would be with that person in their, it could be put it in their portfolio, as we had that as well. And the town hall, the peace power circles, the group work I'd like to talk about is it's called Literacy Outside the Box. It was an art project that came together, and it was led by a volunteer tutor, the instructor, and students all came together to do this art piece. And how did it impact the learning? Well, we were quite surprised. The art pieces brought out a lot of feelings and self-reflections, which motivated them to move towards their goal when they came into the program. And also we saw self-confidence. And, you know, in the first workshop, with the creative storytelling, you know, how do you tell your story in an environment where there's and it builds confidence and relationships. So this is all coming into that social aura of bringing together. And one of the art pieces that brought out to a lot of people was that one on education, not medication. There was a lot of emotions behind that art piece. In the end, these art pieces were displayed in a one-night show in a gallery, which was donated to us by the community. And also the students did a poetry presentation, speaking of the words of their presentations and presenting their art pieces, which was very meaningful to the community. And what it did was it built self-confidence. It built relationships, positive relationships. It built respect because they also came to understand the diverse backgrounds that were brought into this art piece. And some of the students also developed advocacy skills in the sense that they also went to into the government presentation into the ministries and presented on what the programs, how they benefited from the literacy programs that were delivered in community. Next, please. A little bit about the celebrations. We had celebrations of learning where certificates were given, and we had a celebration of food. We had a celebration of different activities in terms of coming together in workshops to do with painting. And we had outside presenters come in to present workshops on time management as well as project management. And the project management came into play and in importance when the students got together. They wanted to put out a newspaper for Beat the Street, and it was called Voices from the Street. So the team that got together came together and they used the project management that they had learned to develop their project. So when what date they would, all the tasks they had to do to get that piece of the news paper out. And that came together in a very, very methodical way. It was interesting to see that the group understood all their roles in this project. And this developed even more, developed their literacy skills in terms of the writing, as well as also the oral literacy in terms of advocacy and having a voice to share their needs and how they can also improve the program. We also had town hall meetings, I think, in the group projects where they would bring their concerns to the group, to the staff, and discuss how they could improve the program and what they would like to see improved in the programming. We also posted, we had suggestion boxes where students were allowed to, put their suggestions in, and it was addressed at the town hall meetings. Okay, so the next, please. Okay, so coming to the next core practice is the stop put downs, acting with respect. Next. So we're moving on to now the stop put downs. All right, so I will talk a little bit about the Peace Power Pledge. And the Peace Power Pledge reads, "Today I will act with respect for myself, others, and the earth, giving up put downs, threats, and weapons." And we introduced this pledge in orientation workshops for students who are coming into our program, as well as the volunteer tutor training. This was also used in volunteer tutor training. And it was explained why this pledge is important in our learning community, because it's a space to learn and to make mistakes. And I think that was the most important part of this space, in the sense they were allowed to make mistakes, because that's when the learning happened. It was a non-judgmental environment. There was opportunities to participate in the learning community, and they were allowed to, there was a space to contribute their knowledge, to share their experiences and cultures with each other, and to address concerns, just to name a few. And also, they saw it as an investment in their learning and working towards a positive learning community. So this was, the pledge was usually used every morning. When they came, they took this out and they read it, and so that would guide them throughout the day. in terms of interactions with other people. The respect and disrespect are common among youth. And clarifying definitions is a really important first step in moving towards the respectful action. The acting with respect, it included positive actions and discouraged unbecoming behavior. So it also meant reorganizing differences, it also meant recognizing differences, understanding their significance, and responding with interest, politeness, and care. This keeps the process safe, and the process requires deep listening, done in a way that does not presume what the speaker is going to say. This was also, we had workshops that were developed to address the respect, how to act with respect. And I think the most important thing we also learned from this was that listening skills became an important part of the process in terms of integrating all the four core practices. Okay, next one, please. And acting with respect for oneself involved recognizing one's value and talents and avoiding actions likely to damage to oneself. In my experience, speaking with the young adults coming to the program at the initial meeting, I always ask the individual, what do you think you do well, or what you have taught yourself that you think you do well? And the response I usually receive is, wow, no one ever asked me that question. I have to think about that. So expanding on this, you can give them time to think about it, because they didn't realize they have these special gifts that they bring to the program. I had a lot of artists coming to the program, musicians, poetry writers, and also makeup artists who came into the program. So this was really something that gave them an opportunity to think about what gifts they're bringing to the program and how they can share it. So acting with respect for others meant avoiding the coercive strategies, for example, threats and punishments. And a lot of the students, I must say, that came into our program came from the justice system, came from, had experienced violence, had anxiety, and abuse, so mental health issues. So this was a very important part of the program that was important for them to know that this environment that we are all working together is a safe environment. And that's how we can move forward. Acting with respect while honoring the value of the other. Some examples of respectful behavior would be, even to say thank you to people who helped you, waiting your turn, showing to class on time. So this showing to class on time was sometimes a concern for the students because life does get in the way. And it was also disruptive to a lot of the students who were there. And as I can share this, I'll talk about it in the next, another slide. What they did was they got to come to an agreement or to a solution as a group. And I'll talk about that later on. So some of the tools to implement respect, we use the peace power agreement. What does that mean? What does that look like? The agreement that we use, we had in that agreement, what kind of a place is Beat the Street? And some of the questions that were in that agreement that they can ask and we discussed is, what can I expect from the program? What can I expect from staff and tutors? And what does Beat the Street expect from me? So this was shared in the initial orientation with the students as well as the volunteers. And we made sure that we always ask the participants, what are their expectations of us? And the learning environment is created really by both the student, the instructor, the volunteer, tutors, and staff, the other staff as well. So the Peace Power Agreement was signed by the students and the volunteers. Then also we had a respect calendar of events. And I'll share that slide later on. In that calendar, it had a list of the month and the list of events that would happen. And some of the students, this was really meaningful to them because it also showed the cultural diversity of the students in the program. And students also took the opportunity to research some of the topics that were in that list and talk about it sometimes at the meetings we had, the town hall meetings, and sometimes in the classroom. We also designed workshops in the regarding what respect looks like. We used the coat of arms to bring to discuss in the workshop the diversity and the gifts that other people bring to the workshop. And we also discussed human rights issues in the workshop. And also, we also had a bullying prevention workshop. In other words, we talked about bullying. What does that look like? And how does that, what does respect, how does respect impact on bullying, and what does it look like when there's no bullying? So in today's society and today's environment, it's with what's going on in society, these things become really are very key issues that are important in the programs. And how do we use that working with young children and working with young adults and also the adult programs? Next slide, please. Okay, so this is what I was talking about. So February, Black History Month, the Right to Read Week. So, what the students would see this, and they would also do their research. And we would also have a display board relating to these topics in the program as time went on. So there was a lot of group work that went into this, a lot of coming together of different ideas and activities that students wanted to partake in. Next, please. This is the coat of arms that we used in the workshop, and it was very general. It was a getting to know each other, how I like to spend my time, some things that really important to me, my skills or talent that nobody knows about, a value that's important to me. Students would use this coat of arms in the workshop and share it with the other participants. Now, if the students were not comfortable to share with the other participants, that was okay. It was done anonymously, and they could share only if they wanted to. It was not obligatory, or there was no obligation to share. The next piece, please. The coat of arms. Okay, so that is something that a space was provided so that they could put their coat of arms. And I think that space really, they didn't have to put their name. So that space really also gave a collective picture of who is in the classroom, who is in the program. When I first came to the program, it was a drop-in program. Nobody knew each other. So this peace power strategy was developed to bring this cohesiveness of the young adults. And it can be used quite effectively in creating positive learning. That peace power, the coat of arms, I would suggest using it after 3 or 4 weeks participants in the program so that they get to know each other before really using that coat of arms. So that's how we worked that. So now the next core practice we're going to look at is the solving of problems. Concept of sharing power is seen from the perspective of the Native America. The concept is based in traditional Pueblo thought, and other indigenous nations also have contributed to this as well. And the sharing of power, it involves a collective action from all participants, contributing their gifts, their powers which they bring to community. And each other's contributions are genuinely valued, and the voices are heard and are collectively responsible for outcomes. So this is constructive power and not a coercive power. The situation is also, Dr. Mateni also takes into account and research the account of empowerment versus shared power. What does that look like? And this situation is quite different from discussions of empowerment. In the situation of empowerment, it's like one person sharing or giving someone, bringing that empowerment to another person. That's okay. There's nothing wrong with it. But in the shared power situation, both professionals and participants in the group bring their gifts, talents, and power to the table to address the task at hand. So empowerment is not a bad thing. It starts off there, and then we're moving to the shared power to come together to share this. And the contributions from the professional participants and also program participants are critical to the overall outcome of the task. Neither contribution is more important than the other. So there is no need for competition if there's a recognition that strong power is constructive. An example of this in our program is when we got together in workshops, and it also included volunteer tutors, everyone came together to share their experiences and their knowledge on the topic at hand. And when students also experienced challenges in learning, the team came together, and the student was central in terms of sharing their struggles and their challenges and what their needs were from us, from the instructor, from the coordinator, from the volunteer tutor, from the staff all around. So this was really helpful in really helping the student to move forward in their growth. And also we had self-reflections became also key in terms of developing their own power and recognizing what their needs were in terms of moving forward. May I have the next slide, please? So the tools that we used to implement problem solving, it was group work. We did a lot of group work, and we used cooperative learning strategies in that group work. In the group work, they also got a chance to recognize their roles, the different kinds of power they had, in terms of each one had their own role in the group. One was the note taker, or one was the presenter. So this gave them an opportunity to experience different roles, and also to plan how to plan their tasks and to record the steps required to move forward in their planning. we had the activities, the monthly town hall meetings, a newsletter committee. We did the student surveys and suggestion box, and participation in community, where a lot of the students also participated in elections, in civic duty. They volunteered their services in the elections. We talked about elections in a group situation. So these are some of the tools that we used to help the students to move forward in their learning about themselves. And, you know, the learning was transformative, and sometimes we don't see that transformative learning happening, but sometimes we could see also the change in behavior in moving forward with the learning. And the next slide, please. Okay, so now we are going to finding solutions and making peace. How do we do this? The next slide. Next slide, please. Yeah, finding a solution and healing. The first thing that you know, the core of the peace power strategy is really to build relationships and to really mend relationships. And so how do we go about doing that? And it's making the peace power tool. Making the peace power, the primary goal is to making peace, which is finding a solution, as well as finding healing in the relationships damaged by the behavior of one or more involved. And in the indigenous culture, from many places in the world, have elaborated on this perspective. For example, in the Maori of New Zealand and many native cultures in the Western Hemisphere. From this perspective, a mixture of teaching and healing, not punishment, is required. And research has shown that incarceration or punishment works against the healing process. So how do we move forward in making peace and working with the repairing these relationships? We have the peacemaking tool, and Dr. Mateni uses this. It's in his book, Peace Power for Adolescents. It's a very good tool to use, and I'll talk about that in the next slide. We also have conferencing. The conferencing was everybody came to the table to address the issue or the challenge that the individual was having. I can give you an example where the outside supports for one student, the supports that this person was having from the social worker, the doctors, the doctors that they were working with homelessness, the people who were working with the residences for this person, also in the justice system. We all came together. We were invited to come to that table and to share our observations and our how this person was doing in our program. It was a very positive outcome. It was conferencing based on developing procedures for this person to follow, and structured, this person needed structure. So how this person was moved into an environment where they had structure, they had also flexibility within that structure to develop and to move forward. And before I left, I did meet someone who was on that committee, and that person is doing really well. The student is doing really well. So that was with conferencing and also mediation. We also had workshops with de-escalation skills, giving and receiving constructive feedback, how to give constructive feedback and how to receive it. And this was received very well because it was done in a way that was not they had choices to make. They could take the feedback if they wanted it, and if they didn't want the feedback, they also had that choice not to accept it. So those workshops were quite important in terms of how to make peace and build relationships that they felt needed building. This could also be done in the home and in organizations, in the community, in the learning community, in small groups. It's very flexible use of this tool. I'll talk about the tool, Making Peace tool, which is on the next slide. Making Peace, yes. So we use this tool, and it is it's really used in problem solving, naming the issue, listening respectfully to everyone's experience, listing the choices for repairing the harm done, making an agreement, and recognizing contributions to healing. So this was a very useful tool that we used, and I will be sharing this. I will be sending this tool out as well to Sandra to share with the participants. This is also develops, I think, the literacy skills. You can work in partners and taking notes, and you can also have, we also had words that were already printed, and the students had to find the words that they could use to use this tool. So in moving forward, next slide. So in this presentation, we looked at what is the Peace Power strategy. We know that it's not a curriculum. It's a strategy, it's a process that is used to build positive learning environment, to engage in learning environment. Next. The 4 core practices that we talked about: recognizing contributions, respect, stopping the put downs, solving problems, and making peace. Those are the 4 cornerstones of the Peace Power strategy that was used. And it is supported by behavioral research by Dr. Mark Matani. We also had a look at applying the tools in creating positive learning communities. These practices cannot be looked at as individualized things. They're all integrated. So they're interwoven, and it is difficult to determine where one ends and the other begins. And the Peace Power, it can be used in organizations, in families, in communities, in business, in school, or any group that decides to engage in its practices. So today we have looked at a few tools that could be used in engaging learning. And it's very much in a social context, and it is based also in Beat the Street. The program was also looked and based on the restorative social practices, and students coming into the program. So these practices that we used in the program helped to prevent any violence or any social issues, challenges that came into the environment. So we're trying to look at it from a how should I say, a preventative measure. And some of the questions, I'd like to leave with you today, and for you to consider. What are some activities you could use to implement Peace Power in the environments that you're working in, or the environments that you're living in? What partnerships can you form? What resources would you require to implement some of these? And what are some possible obstacles or challenges you could foresee in terms of moving forward? Okay, so thank you so much for listening. I'm open to questions. At the end of this PowerPoint, I also had some case studies, but I don't know if we have time to go through, but it will be included so that you can have a chance to look at it and discuss in your group or in your organization what can happen. All right?
So I don't see any questions in the chat right now.
Okay.
But one thing that you explained to me really that I thought was very helpful was when you talked about the difference between empowerment and shared power in terms of, starting with empowerment to work towards. Can you unpack that a little bit?
Yes. As an educator, we go into the classroom or we have our programs that will really encourage learners to get engaged in learning. Number one, we have to realize a lot of the learners coming in have intrinsic motivation as well. Okay. So, and sometimes they don't realize their gifts that they have. So our job would be to help them to recognize those gifts. That's the empowerment, right? So when they recognize their gifts, that gives them what? The self-confidence as a person to really now take those gifts, share it with others. And I can say that when I was in the classroom teaching, I could see the change in behavior. One would develop their strengths and then take those strengths and work with student who needed some help or support, I should say, support to build in their learning. I was in a classroom of 15 adults, and one person who was there was from one of the islands, a newcomer to the program, and there was a person there who had been in the program for a while and was looking for work. But the person who came in that program, just a newcomer, had found a job. Found a job how? By going and hooking up with an agency. And the language skills were low, but that person took the initiative to do that, but also had the support at home to help. And these two adults got together, worked together, and finally this other person started getting jobs, and they found the process. They developed a process where they could go together and get employment. So that is the empowerment and how it works to bringing your gifts and your strengths to that environment. Does that make sense, Sandra?
Yes, thank you, Rosita. And what I would see in terms of the students that Rosita worked with, they, would often come very reticent and shy. And by the end of the program, the confidence and the connectedness that they had with one another and with our organization was astounding. So thank you, Rosita, for sharing all your experiences.
Oh, you're very welcome. Thank you for having me.
And again, Rosita has offered to include her name on the networking list, so you can ask questions of her later. As well, we will be sending out this PowerPoint, as well as the resource that you mentioned by Dr. Mark
Matani,
the
yes.
Peace Power Strategy. Thank you.
Yes, you're welcome.